Sparky Coach Pod, Sparky Coach Lounge Room, featuring Cam,
Good
obviously,
stuff.
myself, and the one and only Tom from Ryelec. Tommy, how are you?
Very well. How are you?
Very good. Just tell us a bit about like life for you right now, family life. What sort of going on. Still in
Family
God's
life.
country, Sutherland Shire.
Yeah, still in the Shire, mate. Never left. I made the big move from Engadine, where I grew up, to Heathcote. So
Huge.
yeah, huge. Yeah,
You
one
don't
one
know
whole
that's
suburb.
next suburb
One
over.
whole
So does
suburb.
that affect your allegiance between soccer teams and like rugby league teams and stuff, like Engadine Dragons to
Uh
Heathcote? I
that's
don't
that's a
know if Heathcote has a
that's a
team.
past life for me. Yeah, I don't really do sport anymore. I just work now and deal with kids. So
Nice. How old are the kids?
so the oldest kid, Asher, my son, just turned 5. He's born on Anzac Day. So yeah, I don't party on Anzac Day anymore. And then my youngest one's 3.5.
So two up for you was literally two kids and up.
Yeah.
That was it. Two children. That was it.
Two
So,
kids.
um, and what did he get for his birthday?
What did he get? A lot of Hot Wheels,
Cool.
a few clothes, a couple of soccer balls, a big 2 meter soccer net because he's starting to get into soccer himself a little bit. Just heaps of other stuff. Plenty of toys.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now, talk us through. I want to sort of go through your journey because a question I get asked a lot is, "Oh, should I go into automation?" And I've got my opinions on that. Like, I'll get into that probably. I think that'll come out as we go through. You would be. I would say you're a rare beast. You have such a skill with people and you have such a skill in the automation realm, which is quite rare. Most automation, if you're that personality type inclined, you probably not all the time, but a little bit maybe spectrumy, like really difficult to deal with. But you always shocked me that you were quite easy to deal with. The final straw for me, and obviously we've done a lot of jobs together and worked together back in the day. But I remember I had this one guy who from a company who shall remain nameless, and we had to get these lights. It was this unit on Elizabeth Bay, and we had to get there at dusk to make sure the lights were correct. And I'm talking like it. I don't know how much this unit's worth, like $20 million, like a full floor looking straight at the Harbour Bridge. And the guy came and it was just the most difficult person, so incredibly rude to the architect, the builder, and myself. I was literally in damage control, personality wise, trying to like steer this ship. And I'm like, this architect gives us so much work. The builder gives us so much work. The client is worth $1 billion. Like, can you please just suck it up for the next 2 hours? And he's like, I don't get paid for this stuff. It's after hours, and no one can program like me. And I think that's what I loved about that was probably my last job with them. Then moving to Ryelec, I loved that dealing with you. You were great with people. You cared. You were kind, and you were excellent at your job. But you're still right on top of the ball of what's new, what's coming out, what the future is, which I feel like is a skill set in itself, which not everyone has. But talk us through what life in Ryelec looks like now. You got a factory team. What jobs are you on? Like, what does it look like, and what's a day-to-day life in
Yeah.
your
So yeah, these days, especially now, we're pretty much pure automation. So we started, I think back to you saying like personality wise and stuff like that. I think that came from me actually starting off as a general Sparky and being, I did my apprenticeship as just a, I think they call it a house basher, resi
So you
Sparky.
you were with K-Tech,
Yeah, Cater. Yeah, yeah,
and you worked with was Davis your
yep, yep.
so
He was my
Davis
tradesman, my
your
teacher.
idol?
Yeah,
Sensei. He was like he was my first tradie
yep,
and incredible tradie. Would you
yeah.
agree with that?
Really good, 100%.
Incredible. There's rumors he used to wear like nudies to work, like nudie jeans, $300 jeans as a second apprentice.
He had a few styles, Davis. Yeah, he was a legend. My biggest memory of Davis was he used to park at the traffic lights. He'd wind your window down, and then he'd do this like big squeal noise, and then he'd put his head back, so the people in the car next to you would just be looking at me as an apprentice, and I'm just there going, "Wasn't me, it was that guy, I swear." And he just do weird stuff like that. It's pretty funny.
That's
It made it
heaps
interesting.
funny. And how was K Tech? Because you guys like obviously we're from the same era. If you haven't pieced that together yet, not you but the listeners. How was K-Tech? Like you're obviously doing, from my understanding from the outside perspective, a lot of houses. Like when Matt came to us, he was the best. Like he rough in, fit off, anything sort of new or refurb or commercial, he was literally changed our company for the better because he was so good at that. So it seems like you guys did a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, K-Tech was really good. I learned a lot there. We had a pretty wide range of electrical, and that's actually where I sort of got the taste for automation. K-Tech didn't do automation, but we worked on a big home. I think Davis was probably on it in Sylvania Waters, and we were just running pink cables. I had no idea what I was doing. Turns out we were cabling for C-bus.
Yeah.
And
Just
then
loop it around, full loop.
just loop it, yeah. And this guy just rocks up one day, dressed pretty nice. His tool bag was a laptop bag, plugs in, starts programming stuff, and I'm like, oh, looks pretty good. That was better than crawling under the muddy floor yesterday. So
Who was it?
actually can't remember. This was a long time ago. This would have been, I don't know, like top.
Yeah, this is like full probably C bus at that point.
This was like, yes, when C-Bus was just C-Bus, and you put just C-Bus in a house and a color touchscreen, and that was the bee's knees at the time. There was no music
It
and
looked like Tetris, like
yeah,
when you go back to it,
100%.
it looked like Mario Brothers on like a Game Boy.
Nintendo
Yeah,
64 style, yeah, like just um, yeah. But at the time, that was amazing. You could push a button and set goodbye, and your whole house would turn off. Everything connected to C-Bus anyway.
and that sort of set you on that trajectory. Like, were you always that way inclined? Like, would you pull something out and try and fix it?
I wouldn't say I was always that way inclined. I did some stuff, sort of, I guess, like that when I was younger, where like I made a table in woodwork at school, and when I took it home, I cut a big hole in it and put a speaker in it so we could drink around it on the front lawn and listen to music and just stuff like that. But yeah, like I wasn't like I always was on computers, but not. I wouldn't say I was a full computer guy,
Yeah.
but I was
Okay.
always
So
interested.
interesting. So okay. So day in the life now, and then I want to go through that journey, like your journey to automation.
Yeah,
But yeah, what's the team size, factory? What kind
yeah.
of
So team size now is about 10. We've got an admin staff now. I've got a guy in the office, Davin, who basically helps me run the day to day and manage everything, and he's learning some quoting and stuff like that. And then we've just got a team after that of programmers and installers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. And also want to touch on this is really interesting for me because I remember when we were first chatting. Oh, hang on one sec. My mic was plugged in. Interesting. So when we were first chatting, Tommy, like you were sort of solely automation when we were first working together, and then you did branch out into electrical. Um, I was always concerned because I felt like your target market is probably electricians, right? So you don't want to sort of
Yeah.
bite the hand that's feeding you, but you
It was
sort of
actually the other way. So we started as Sparkies. So I did electrical apprenticeship. Then I went out by myself, started Ryan Electrics with an X because Ryan Electric spelt correctly was taken,
sick.
um,
Yeah.
which I thought was cool at the time. Uh,
It's
then
still cool. It's still
yeah,
cool.
it's probably cool. Yeah, I should have kept it. And then then I started doing C-bus courses, and then the first job was one of my mates was working out at a pub in Mudgee. So the first job I ever did that was C-bus was a pub in Mudgee. So just threw myself in ridiculously deep. Um,
That's deep. Was that like
Yeah,
what
was
was the
that
override?
full?
Yeah, what
Yeah,
was the
like
override system of CBus there? Was it just the CBus controller? There was nothing over the top of
so
it?
it was a full pub renovation. So it was all brand new C-bus.
Yeah.
So I was at the start I thought, oh, this will be basic, just put a few relays and dimmers in, and then it went to a color touchscreen. Then it went to this heating and misting system that had to take in the values of temperature outside and inside, and automatically run it based on that and trading hours. Then it went to this color wheel system, and luckily it was the slowest job in history, so I had a lot of time to sort of practice at home and learn it all. And then I just rock up, I drive 4 hours out to Mudgee, I'd rock up with a program file that I was assuming was going to work. We'd load it up and I'd just be like, oh, thank God.
so. Did you do the electrical as well, or were you
No,
just doing the programming
that
only
was
on this
just the
job?
programming. So yeah, so basically we
Okay.
started off with Sparkies, then we went to sort of hybrid, electrical and automation. Then I've always tried to push just automation, but we've always ran electrical. Then we had a solar stint for a little while. and then the solar's gone. The electrical still remains slightly, but we're like 95% automation now.
The electrical probably has to remain slightly a little bit, given some of your work so like integrated with it.
Yeah, so I always want to keep, so all of our programmers in my company are Sparkies first. We're a bit different like that.
Yep.
We do a few things that are different as well, where we actually manufacture the KNX boards and we pre-build them for other electricians, and we prefer to install our equipment on site. It just saves a lot of headaches.
Yeah, how did that work with like is all your staff in Sydney?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
so how did it work? Because you guys finished a job with 40 New Age
Yep.
Electrical. Do you flew up for that? Like
No,
what?
I've
No,
never been to that site before.
just full remote.
Yep. So
Just
that's one thing
amazing.
I really want to concentrate on now, because like electrical, if you're doing electrical work, you have to be in that location. But I feel like programming, if you have the process right and you can do it right, you can do it anywhere, to an extent. So that was a lighting control project. So basically, 40's team had really good documentation, sent it to us. We were able to then confidently be able to quote it to do it all remote. Plus, with the internet these days, you can log into anything. So we got all the equipment sent to us. We pre-programmed it from the plan, boxed it up, sent it to them, and it had one little module that allowed us to connect to the internet. And once they wired it all in, we just logged in with the guys on site, just commissioned all the DALI and just mapped it all, just sort of finished it off and gave it a test with them running around. So when you do a remote job, you've just got to make the electrician aware that they need to set some time aside to sort of help us identify some things and test some things.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Like the visual on-site person.
Yeah, basically be the boots on the ground, yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Who's the best Sparky company you've worked with?
Oh, it'd have to be Crow Electrical, sure.
That's what I was fishing for. But like I can imagine because I feel like you brought in for us, like working with you was so good. You'd be like, I need this, 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 and this, and I feel like we've got a similar sort of
Yep.
temperament, which gets along, which is good.
Yep.
And yeah, cool. But honestly though, like who was it?
There's a
Like
couple of good ones. So a smaller company, Talon Electrical, they're Sydney based. They've just smashed jobs out for us. We just basically rock up, put some stuff in. We're working with TCA Electrical at the moment down in Sydney. They're pretty solid. I can't think of who else. They're all pretty good, to be honest. Like they do fluctuate. Like we're on some jobs where they are a sort of a two or three man team, and they need a lot of hand holding. But that's completely fine. Like we're happy to do that because that's sort of where our value is, I guess.
yeah, and that's what I've always loved about you. I could call you and ask you anything, and you would answer. So I feel like a lot of people get stuck. I remember my first job. Did you ever work at like the Sonomas with us? Did you ever go there with
Don't think
the
so.
bread companies? So anyway, so I remember my first job with them. We renovated this cafe in Rose Bay, and I got the lights, and I was like, "What's this?" And I hadn't read that they were Dali, and I'd never heard of
Yeah.
Dali at that point. I was like, "What's Dali?" Like, and then so it's interesting because a lot of a lot of business journey is sort of failing forward, I guess you would say. And I remember having to realize that it needed, a
Yeah.
figure eight as well, and it was off the 0 to 10 bowl. So just explain for anyone listening what's Dali and how does it work,
Yeah.
and can
So
you use it in different systems? Like, yeah,
Dali seems like a mythical creature to a lot of electricians that see it the first time. So DALI stands for Digital Addressable Lighting Interface. So basically, it means that the drivers themselves hold the programming, and it's all around grouping and identification of those lights. So basically, instead of phase cutting, so usually dimmers, they're called phase cut dimming, which is what I explain to a client as like choking the voltage before it gets to the light. You're like, you're cutting it, which is why you get all that flickering and all that kind of stuff. So DALI is digital dimming, which means it's dimming on the load side. And you can program a light, so you can have 64 lights on a line, and then you can group them all together, but it's all done with software, which means it originally started in our commercial buildings because they wanted to move the partitions, but not have to rewire the lights every time. So they just get a programmer in and they just regroup all the lights.
yeah. So just to stop you there, essentially, if you're wiring Dali, it's a like two in an earth and a figure eight, just like literally goes start to finish loops in and out.
Yep.
And it switched from the 0 to 10 volt side. So there's no womping ever, which is huge. If you're gonna do a commercial, the like the what do you want to call it? The
Yeah.
womping. Like womping, is that the best terminology?
I think
Probably.
warping is the technical term, yeah.
Yeah, womping. So it cuts out anything like that. So for commercial places or high-end residential places, it's actually probably a no-brainer. There's going to be no pulses
For
or anything
sure.
like that. So essentially, what happens is you might wire. How come you didn't say universe and you said line before? Was there any reason?
I'm used to talking that way because when you say universe, people just go, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah,
Are we
cool.
talking about space or are we talking about electrical here?
So you can have up to 64 fittings on a universe, and essentially you log onto a computer and it just brings them all up, and you flash them one at a time and have to
Well, it's
process it.
64 fittings or 16 groups, whatever ceiling you hit first, which that can stitch a lot of people up, yeah.
Yeah, cool. And how many do you recommend? Because obviously you've spoken to me before about like not maxing it out. So
We usually go for 50 fittings and 14 groups, just to leave a little bit of room there because you know what a job's like. They'll always throw an extra wall light or an extra group of downlights in. You just got a bit of room.
So I guess the benefit is, with traditional C-bus or Dynalite, you are throwing something out and it's looping in, and then if you put a partition wall in, well, that's already associated to that relay or dimmer, whatever.
Exactly.
But we can't change it without running a new cable or chucking it in and then reprogramming the whole thing.
Yeah.
But darling, you still got to reprogram, but you can do it remotely from a computer.
Exactly. Yeah, so it started off like that for that commercial situation, but the reason it's used in high-end resi a lot is because of the flickering. It eliminates flickering, and it actually gives you a full range of dimming. So a true sort of 1 or just say 10% to 100%, where phase cutting sort of doesn't do anything until about 20, 25%, and then stops at about 80.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And then anything else you would add to the Dali? Like, is it to debunk the mystery, or that's pretty much?
The only funny thing we see when people first experience Dali as an electrician is I feel like they always just add a lot of money to their quote because of the fear factor. But it actually saves a lot of time and a lot of cable.
So easy to wire, right? Like,
Yeah,
so you literally, if you're listening back to this, you literally wire it like you're looping a light switch or a PowerPoint and just loop in, out,
Yep.
and it doesn't even have to return home,
No.
right? Although you can return it home, and that
We often suggest it returns home just in case you get a break in between the line, and you can just branch out.
Yeah, I guess like CBus doesn't need to return home, does it, darling?
None of them need to return home, and it actually causes an issue if you hook the return loop in. But we have it as like a safety net.
Yeah, cool, sweet. So that's interesting. So Dali's really easy to wire. It's more on the programming. The only thing people get caught with, I would say, is the fitting price.
Yes.
Because the transformers usually,
The
drivers usually much
drivers, yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing people get caught with is like a chandelier that might not have a Dali driver. Applicable to it.
There's a little safety net for that one too, actually. So they make these little Dali phase dimmers now, little pucks. So you can, we've used them quite a few times to get us out of trouble.
Yeah, cool. And then so back to your sort of business journey. You sort of finished your apprenticeship at K-Tech.
Yep.
And then I got a memory of speaking to you at some point. I was walking through the streets of Janelli and Davis texted me your number. And I think it was about like a granny flat roughing that you couldn't get to and we got to it, or vice versa.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember, but that's my first sort of memory of speaking to you. I don't know what year that was. 2013, maybe something like that.
Yeah, a while ago now.
So you finished your time and then went, and what happened in the gap?
So when I finished my time, I subcontracted to K-Tech for a couple of years, just to keep moving. Use that time to get my own car set up, and I actually did a Sutherland Shire business course and learned a little bit about running an actual business because I had absolutely no idea. And then did a few of the CBus training courses, and then just started to get a few builders, do a bit of work for clients. I hear you talk about ceiling fan Jan all the time, did a few of those. And then, it was a bit of a weird time because I'd be doing a ceiling fan one day and then I'd go and program some CBus at a sports club the next day. We were just all over the place.
Yeah, so
Um,
the mud monster,
yeah,
the insulation hero to laptop god.
yeah, exactly that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'd put my nice shirt on when I'd do my programming, and then I'd just put my crappy shirt on when I'd do the other one, and I was just a bit of a hybrid. But
And what advice would you give to someone? Because there's people listening that will be in that sort of subcontract phase of their starting their business. Like, what advice would you have to someone to like, cut the subcontracting or minimize the subcontracting? You might even call it a safety net, which is important to have, and just go like full in. What advice would you have for that?
I actually think it's good advice to start off subcontracting to someone to keep cash flow, and depends what stage of life you're in. Like at the time, I had no kids, I had no mortgage, I didn't have anything. Like I was literally living at my girlfriend's parents' house. So if I didn't have work, it was actually a good day. I'd just chill at home and swim in their pool while they all went to work. But if yeah, I don't know. I feel like at the start it's really good to sort of to have that safety net while you start getting clients. But there is a time where you really have to just pull the pin and just go for it.
Yeah, my advice for me was I did that to my old boss, which is an incredible safety net to do, but you can get caught in the safety net. And
Mm.
subcontracting, you're usually making less money than you would make on wages. And the main difference is on wages, you're working 44 weeks a year. Subcontracting, you're working 52 weeks a year. And the operating costs of running the business, you're absorbing that. So it's like it's pretty huge difference in that mode. But my advice would be to, yes, enjoy the safety net and hopefully it stays around forever, but try and cut back to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1 and give yourself a chance to sort of make it happen for yourself. And then, so the journey to automation was like started off, got a few builders, bit of automation,
Yep.
yeah, what
That's right.
happened?
Then we just started meeting more and more Sparkies like yourself, and just offering automation services. And it was a good thing because we were electricians as well. It was easy to sort of understand the differences between electrical and automation, and then explain that to the Sparkies, and sort of, as you said before, just help out on site a little bit, just get the job to flow a bit better. Where I know there is quite a few automation guys that typically come from more of the audio visual background, and they're not really Sparkies. I guess they're more data guys, really, and they don't understand these little things about phase dimming and how to wire cabling out in the field and things like that. So I felt that helped us a lot get on board with a lot of electricians and a lot of trust with other Sparkies.
Oh, huge. Like that's you probably can't underestimate that. I think for us, and even for me, you were so good to deal with. One thing I do think is funny. Do you remember how you quoted that job for me? It was speakers at Ham, the cafe in Cronulla.
Oh yeah,
And this is a funny story actually. I remember I got you in, you quoted it. It was you gave him three different options, and then I turned up like 2 days later, and someone else was doing the job, and I'm like, Harry, what happened? Why did you use Tommy? And he's like, Tommy, yeah. Harry, I don't know what a nationality is, but he says Malacca heaps, whatever one that is.
yeah.
He was like, Malacca, like the guy tried to overcharge me, and he's like, Harry, legend. It was like, Tommy's quote was $7,000. I'm not paying 7,000. Do you think $7,000? He's like, went on this massive
Yeah.
rant. But what you'd done is you'd put option one, two, three, and the total at the end. So he just
Oh yeah,
straight to the
right.
total and looked at
Forgot
7,200.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember I was like, oh, maybe separate that a little bit. But and I guess that's the failing forward part of business too, right? So I remember I did my C-bus course and push course, and then programmed my own house, and quickly went like, I'm not doing this. Like I don't
Yeah.
have the personality type to. And we were so busy electrically. I guess that's a benefit of living in a city. You've got the ability to niche because you
Yeah.
don't have to be the jack of all trades. But like, and then starting in automation, you had. At what point did you drop the electrical? And would you encourage that? Like, if someone's thinking about automation, would you be like, no, automation only? Like,
It's actually taken us a long time to drop the electrical completely, um, because of the size of the team we had. So if we were a much smaller team, say two or three guys, I would have dropped electrical a long time ago, I reckon. But because we're sort of sitting at 10, I was always a bit nervous. So the electrical we have been doing for the past 2 years is only if it's an automation job as well. So we've actually gone up the ranks a little bit to work with some really premium builders in Sydney. So
so
they get that.
you're at the Gerringong one
Yeah,
for
well, Gerringong's one of them.
yeah.
And then we've also got a few in the city for another builder, Toki Constructions. just a couple of high-end builders like that where we're not their only Sparky. We're one of, say, 3 or 4. But they'll select us for the jobs where the client wants security and automation and all that kind of stuff on top of electrical. And we've just been rolling those for the past sort of, I'd say, 2 or 3 years, and they've been great because I've been able to sort of, like, I've got a really good guy, Chris, who just manages these jobs. Fully trust him, does an amazing job.
He's been
So
there for ages, right?
he's been there pretty much like almost since day one.
Was he at the Bronx job we did together? He was, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think he was. I think he was wiring up all the boards on site.
Yeah, I remember that's a funny story too. I remember we got that job for I think the first one we did was like 325 for those guys, and it was like multi-res with a couple of basements or whatever. And then I remember Kieran called me and he was like, "You need to get this quote to $300 or I'm out." And sorry, 300 grand or I'm out. And we were at 325, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Well, I know where every dollar's going in that. I'm so sorry." Like, and then he calls me back after, and he hung up on me. And it's so stressful when people are putting that pressure on you for pricing. And I remember he called back this afternoon. He's like, "Grow, you got the job." Like, and I was like, "Oh, cool, thanks." At the 325, yeah. Like, that's what I. And then
Just a baby.
just hustling to see if I would draw. But I remember I got given your prices to see if I could match them with a blacked out Sharpie on the price,
yeah.
and I could read it. The
You
Sharpie
see it
when
anyway, yeah.
I could still. And at that point, I was like, "Oh, maybe I'll match that price." And if you're thinking about matching someone else's price, probably you got to question the person who sent you the price to match in the first place. Like an ethical question, and they'll do it to you. That's the rule. And then you've also got to be like, "Well, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't even know how to do that." But I remember was that our first sort of big job together?
Yeah, we did a few little ones, but that was the first
The first proper one. I remember all our staff were like frothing on Tommy's the man. Like,
Yeah. Well, that was back in the day where we used to actually come in and fit off all the boards on site.
Yeah. You would do all the boards, and in which I thought was happy because I quoted for that. I was like, thank God. Get this guy to do it. So that's cool. And then, what advice would you have? Like, so obviously chasing work. I think that one of the things I see is people come in and it takes a while to build a solid clientele. Don't you reckon? So you've been in business for 15 years now, or close?
15 years now.
15, yeah. So it does take time to get that reputation. What advice would you have to someone sort of starting out, and then maybe they don't have the work they want? Like you've obviously said, you've built up a team, you've built up to an operations manager, you've built up your clients to a point where you can probably be a little bit selective now. Like, what would you
say? Especially when we were doing automation, we didn't actually know what we were fully doing. It's just not only caring about the profit on the job, I guess, when it's early. Like, obviously you have to care, but if something goes wrong, just continue on and do the job properly. And it's more about, I guess, building the relationship with people instead of just going, "Oh crap, I'm going to lose money on this job," and just bail on it, or not give people support and help. So, and we've learned a lot of hard lessons just training ourselves in automation in the early days, expensive ones as well.
Can you like give us some examples?
It's mostly just things like you think programming this security panel is going to take a day, but there's issues with the cabling on site, and it ends up taking 2 or 3 days. The main reason actually we started building automation panels is for that reason, because you guys were good, and there's heaps of other Sparkies that are good, but we would rock up to some sites. We would allow, say, 2 days or 3 days to wire the board, and there was this one instance where it took us 2 weeks to get this board done because the cabling was just so bad. There was no labeling, and then I myself was never clear enough in the quotes of like where's the line, like who's doing what.
That's so interesting because it's like you think about livening a board up. In my opinion, the company who roughed it in should liven up, because what if you flick something on and like who turns it on?
So we do it with them. So basically we do all the control wiring. And look, there was a little while there I was like, that's it, we're not doing this anymore. We just get the Sparkies to do it. But then I was like, oh, that's back to how all the other automation companies are. So we just changed it to where we just start building them in the factory. But yeah, that job was 2 weeks of hell. Like we were just there every day, just losing money every day. turning things on with the Sparkies on site. Things are tripping out. We had to help them. You know, it just and that was the where I snapped basically.
Yeah, that's interesting because my advice to people, I had a conversation with one of our members yesterday who had like a leaking deck tile and then a leaking roof. This is solar on roof tiles.
Yeah,
And it's interesting because I was like, just make sure in 5 years' time you can look back and be proud of yourself how you handled it. I think that's a really good reflection point. Like
yeah,
at the start, you're like, it's the roofer's problem, it's this problem. Like someone should have said, I'm going to back charge everyone. Like
yeah,
I'm not going to finish that job properly. But I feel like if you can flash yourself forward 5 years and look back and be like, no, I made the good decision. That's a really healthy way to look at it. But how, I mean, obviously in the moment it's hard when you're losing money and the
you're
job's
super
not
frustrated. Yeah.
and you know the year wasn't what it was. So that's a really good thing. And where do you reckon that comes from in you? Is that just the kind of company Ryelec wants to be, or is that
It's definitely what we want to be. I have no idea where it comes from, to be honest. I just feel like it's just the right thing to do. Like, you know, it's. I guess you've just got to, like you said, instead of blaming others, you've just got to look at yourself sometimes and be like, well, you know, it's my fault as well as the Sparky who didn't do the jobs properly fault because I didn't put in the quote who's in charge of what, you know. So and these lights have to be on in a week because you know the job's moving forward. So we just got to jump in and do our part and keep the reputation with the builder. And since that job, we've done more jobs with that Sparky and builder because we kept the reputation. So it was worth it.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's huge, isn't it? Sorry, Cam, you would.
Yeah, no. I think that's just like playing the long game. It's not
Mm.
all about. It's not all about the. Call it sort of basically a rip and turn and sort of rip and run almost sort of thing, and then it's like on to the next one because you probably know this, Tommy, and probably live by it and breathe by it from what you've been talking about, but just the importance of, and I guess not importance, but equally, sorry, importance, but equally to just the feeling as a business owner of having the repeat clientele because we've all been in the situation, and I'm sure you have, of like the continual hunting for work,
Yeah,
and it's such a stressful state to sort of be in. I feel to be always
yeah,
looking for work. So out of that, out of I guess like a negative situation, you've had multiple learnings. I'm sure you've tightened up your quotes, no doubt, like
yeah,
in regards to, and then in turn probably tightened up like just operations overall, and then in turn built relationships.
yeah, yeah. I'm 100% more stressed when we don't have enough work than when we've got too much work.
Yeah,
Yeah, I actually always reference the top three stressful times letting someone go, or awful, good or bad.
Yeah,
Not enough work is really, really bad. And then too much work is still really bad, but not as bad as not enough work.
yeah,
Like at least not enough work, you got some levers, overtime, subcontractors, that like not enough work, you really are on costing a raw cost
yeah,
product at that point, which is labor. And then a lot of buffer. This is a sideways comment, but like generally speaking, and automation is incredibly different to this, but the standard electrician will be making on average across the year $10 per hour per person on materials. So that if you've got a team of 10, that's going to add up across the day, or a team of two, that's going to add up across the day. That's $800 a week, 40 grand a year. Like a lot of times the materials buffer margin is a part of the profit margin in the job. So when you're on costing labor only, like a 185 team rate should be 205 if you're moving, or will be 205 if you're moving materials. So if you take that materials buffer out, you are costing a lot. So let's talk about, how do you stay relevant, Tommy, in obviously, you would have seen a lot of changes come into the automation and probably still pushing into the future.
every
You've
day.
come through Cbus with the Tetris style
Yeah,
controller. You've come through Push.
went to push. Yeah,
Push, I did the Push course. Is
and a
that
lot on push.
still there or like?
Push is long gone. Yeah,
So that must be interesting for you because you've got to make decisions based upon what's going to stay around.
yeah,
And then I remember when we were working with originally, you were only doing CBUS, but now you sort of dabbling across everything.
yeah.
What do you like to use, and what do you and why?
Yeah, so we try not to dabble across everything, but we have definitely transitioned from CBus to KNX. So, have you heard of KNX? You know KNX?
Yeah, yeah. So just for the end punter, just explain the difference and
Yep.
yeah,
So everyone, or most people in Australia know Clipsal Cbus and Philips Dynalight. They're the two big players in the lighting control world. The biggest one in the world, actually, but not in Australia, is KNX, and it's not a product that's owned by a manufacturer. It's actually an open source language that has to go through a certification body. So we went over to the Light and Building Show in Europe last year. Flew over there for 2 weeks and went to this show. It was like 3 or 4 massive halls just of KNX because
Don't
it's
downplay it to me, Tommy. This is a tax write-off. This is that's what
well,
it is.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love it. I
Well,
love
actually, a supplier took us over there.
Oh, sick.
Okay.
All expenses paid.
Yeah.
And I mean all expenses paid. Like I put so we took one of our other guys, Max, who's like our head programmer.
I know Max. Yeah,
You know
yeah.
Max. So both of us went over for a 2 week holiday. I put $2,000 into like this little travel card, thinking that I'm going to need to top it up. We spent $500 between us in 2 weeks. They paid for every meal, um, every transfer, accommodation, the whole lot.
That's
It was,
cool.
it was
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, yeah. So
And
that's Ivory Egg.
how much does that affect your sort of brand loyalty? Obviously the
Uh,
relationship is a huge part of loyalty.
yeah, yeah. Well, like we'll use them forever now. Plus Ivory Egg. So that's the company name, weird name, but that's the name of the supplier.
It's a pretty
They
weird name, man, to be honest. Sounds like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it's a bit out there. Yeah. So there's probably up to 600 manufacturers now that make KNX stuff. So it's this huge world. Like you can get lost for forever. What they do is they source all the good brands and the good equipment, and they bring it into the country. And you've still got multiple options, but they might have it's KNX to Dali gateway, and they might have 4 brands instead of 50, and they'll bring in maybe 10 or 12 different switch types instead of 200. Because when we first started doing KNX, the best thing about it is you have all these suppliers and all these options, but it's also the worst thing about it because you just confuse the hell out of people and yourself. But it's super powerful. Where Clipsal, Cbus, and Dynalight can really do an amazing job at controlling lights and mostly lights and blinds and stuff only. KNX really has something for everything. You just got to pick the right product from the right manufacturer.
And what switches do they use?
Well, so if it's a lower spec home, we'll use the Hagar Silhouette. They just have a KNX version. And we'll go all the way up to a Basalt Fibonacci, which retails for about $1,300 a switch.
Sounds sexy. I'd
It
never
is sexy.
even
Yeah, we've
heard
got
of.
one in our showroom here, and they're pretty hot.
That's
Yeah.
cool. Now, what about like how do you deal with that? Because some things are spec from the architect level.
Yep,
Like so a client or architect love a certain style of switches,
that's
whether
right.
it's like how do you like are you sort of because a lot of times you get a quote as an electrician and it's fully specced out, especially those high-end homes. Like this is the switches we're using, this is the system, right down to the Somfy wind controller, like
Yeah.
how do you deal with that?
Well, some of them we can't sway them, but a lot of them and most of them we will send them a design and a quote of what we would do, and then we send them. We've got multiple forms and links on our website that we can send to show the customers the other options that are available. Because an architect, as you know, most architects just default to Dynalight all the time. It's just
Yeah,
Dynalight, Dynalight, Dynalight.
yeah. Well, a lot of architects as well, and I would say this, don't be scared to share your expertise when you get plans across your desk
Yep,
because most people just literally, it's like contracts. They just copy paste the same thing they did,
mm,
and scope of works, copy and paste, and just like move
yep,
on. So I think there's an element where you've got to be the expert and suggest.
yep, definitely.
So yeah, cool. Continue on.
I think the biggest change that we had, so it was always difficult to sort of push what we thought until we built the showroom and did a lot more marketing on our website about the things that we prefer to use. So we would basically suggest what we think, and then we'd tell them we have a showroom. You feel free to come and just have a look at it, have a look at this stuff, see how it works, use it in person. And a lot of the time, you get the clients in and they just change their mind instantly and just say, "Yeah, we've got to do this for sure."
That's cool. And then what, like the showroom, obviously, when did you get that?
I lose track, but it would have been 3 or 4 years ago.
Cool. And how have you found often when people get warehouses and factories, like their business completely changes and transitions? Like
Yeah,
how did you find that when you first got the warehouse and factory, like the
yeah, that
place of work, you
definitely
might say?
definitely did for us too. So I was at the start, I was working out of my garage, like
Oh, I
most
remember
people
picking
do.
stuff up from you from your garage.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, there you go. Down
yeah.
in Was that down in Helensburgh, or was that
No, it was Heathcote. Yeah,
up in, yeah, okay, yeah.
I think Geordie, because he was one of my
Sure,
staff,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
he would deal with you a lot in Helensburgh, but that
yeah,
was Heathcote for sure.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went from Helensburgh back up to Heathcote.
It's like the block was a little bit
Yeah,
slopey. Talking
yeah,
about a pool
yeah.
in the backyard, kind
That's
of
the
like,
one,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, once we moved into the factory, there was a lot of lessons to learn around, extra overheads, and but it was great because when I was in Heathcote, we actually had this downstairs rumpus room that when it rained, it actually flooded. Um, and that was the office, and my wife and newborn kid was upstairs, and then Max would rock up and come around through the side gate and into the rumpus room, and I'd come down the stairs, and we'd start the workday, but you could hear kids squealing in the background, and the dog would come up and lick our leg, and then if it rained, we'd have wet feet and all this kind of stuff.
No noise in nap times as well. Like, don't wake
Yeah,
the kid.
oh yeah, yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
Um,
so
Plus,
funny.
yeah, yeah, and then so once we moved to the factory, it was massive. Like, people
Yeah,
were able to come and go when they needed to, and yeah,
that's a huge thing. Moving to the factory, I think it. What advice would you have? I would say on a calculator sense, you're wanting 3 to 5 staff members before you go to a factory,
yeah,
and it's going to affect your overhead around 3 to 4K a month on average. And so around $10 per hour per person. So your overheads go from, $30 to $45, somewhere in that range, to sort of, $40 to $55. So the things, if you pretty much overhead per hour, the things you used to do profitably, you now are probably breaking even for in
mm.
business like that. So how did you find that transition? Did your quoting need to change? Was there like a drop in your net profit, or were you just making more money, but because you're working out of the flooded basement?
Nah, I feel like we definitely. So I was not an expert at all this kind of stuff. Full disclaimer. So I learned everything the hard way. So basically, we moved into the factory, started paying extra expenses, and then I started to see a bit of a drop, and that's when we needed to look at things and reevaluate. Plus, I feel like as well, I got stuck there for a while where we just ended up with so much stock and materials because we had all this room. When it was at my house, I
But
didn't have the room.
40 who I know is listening, and he's got so much stock.
Yeah,
I actually gave him 2 of our hit guns because we didn't need them, and I was like, these things have been sitting under my floor for like ages. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Just so much stuff. I'm still carrying rolls of cable.
yeah. Well, you
Fight.
gave me platform ladders, if you remember. We still use those sometimes on our commercial sites.
Did ya?
You know
Funny story.
the yellow
Those
platforms you gave?
4 foot
Yeah,
platform ladders. Are they the 4 footers?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's heaps funny. I remember I bought them at a job. I don't even know if I can name them, for a builder
Yeah.
who we needed platform ladders for. I mean, coming from a residential background, you don't even know what a platform ladder
Foreign.
is.
Yeah.
Like, just put a milk crate on top of it, you'll be see. And then I remember we bought that, and the builder went under, and they owed me 50 grand. And I remember going to site at this point, and there was all the trades there throwing, because there's a point where the site becomes property of the administrators, like
Yeah.
anything that builder owned becomes property of someone else. So we were there, and the security guard sort of turned his back on us, and we jumped the fence, and we're like throwing, James Hipwell,
Yeah.
like I borrowed his truck, and we're throwing temp boards over, like just throwing conduit over, throwing stuff over. And then I probably ended up throwing it out anyway, but it was crazy. But okay, that brings up some like
Basically,
ungodly memories.
you stole that stuff and then you gave me the evidence, is what you're saying.
Well, it was mine. It was my stuff. That's like it was because any big site, you're leaving a bunch of stuff on it, and
Yeah.
then at some point, anyway, long story short. So back to that platform ladders. Are you still using them?
Well, funny enough, we're doing all these invisible speakers in an apartment, and the apartment block is still owned by the developers. So yeah, we are. We're using it. We haven't used them for ages, but we're using them at the moment as we speak because we're putting all the invisible speakers in. Yeah,
That's heaps
yeah.
funny.
They
It's
don't get
cool.
much use. Yeah, you got to blow the dust off them in between jobs, but
Yeah, and a 4 foot, such an obscure platform ladder to have as
yeah.
well. Do you reckon? Like it's
You don't
real.
even use the platform, to be honest. We're always on the rung below anyway.
So good. And then, so the transition of your company, you must have to. working with a lot of different job sites and, like high vis here, but not here,
Yeah.
but, sign in here, but not there. How do you sort of manage all that?
A lot of our work these days, to be honest, now that we've refined stuff, is from here in the factory. So we try and do as much as we possibly can here to minimize site time. Saves us a lot of money in travel and wasted time on site. So we've gotten a lot better at that. But yeah, we do. To be honest, most of our stuff's high-end resi. We don't really need to wear fluoros too much, but everyone has a fluoro in their uniform kit. So on the rare occasion we do, we slap them on. But yeah, majority of our stuff these days is from here.
Yeah, cool. And then I think when people say high-end resi, sometimes it's got mixed ideologies. Like,
Mm.
I think there's a proper high-end resi where there is no sort of there's a budget, but there's like full scope. Like I think when you come from eastern suburbs, Sydney, high-end resi has like
It's a
a
different one.
real meaning. Yeah.
People are spending $20 million on building a house. It's
Yeah, it's a
crazy.
huge thing. And not to limit that to Sydney, of course, but that's the
Yeah.
kind of houses we're sort of talking about. So, back before we started the pod, you were talking about, I think you've really set yourself up in a niche market. And like, what advice would you have? So, if, can we get a lot of electrical business owners listening and
Yep.
stuff? Like, can they work with you remotely or only in Sydney?
Yep.
Or like,
Yeah.
can you talk us
100%.
through how your like lead form works and can you talk us through like the process? And because a lot of times people might not want to reach out because they're worried about wasting your time or whatever.
Mm.
So just give us like the holistic Ryelec.
Yeah.
If I was
So
in Byron and wanted to, never met you before, what do I do? What's your phone number? I'm gonna
straightforward. um, so we to simplify the whole process, because when you say I want automation in my house, what does that mean? Like no one knows what that actually means. It could mean to one person, it could mean I want absolutely everything integrated, and to some people, it could mean I want some Sonos speakers in there. So what we did to try and simplify the process for everyone is we built a form on our website called the Build Your System form, and it's like an interactive form with videos, and you can click yes, no, and if you say yes to audio as an example, it'll give you all these default rooms, and you say what type of speakers you want, blah blah blah. If a Sparky has a job that the client's interested in automation, usually we get them to send the client that form. They fill that out. That sends a full report to us. And then we use ground plan, same as 40 does. We mark all of that up. But we use tools that automation related. We push that to our quoting system and we just send that straight out, and that sort of starts the conversation. If they're local here, we'll then bring them into the showroom. If not, we'll basically just send them examples over email. That's usually the best starting point.
Yeah, and that form's pretty exciting. I remember getting your text message about I built this form, check it out.
Yeah.
How long did that take? Was that something you thought about for 5 years or?
I've thought about it forever. My secret weapon is my sister-in-law works for me full time. Ash, shout out to Ash. She's the
Yeah,
best.
Ash. Yeah.
Um,
What makes her the best?
she is just a gun at like graphic design, marketing. So the funniest story about Ash. So this is how Ash started working for me, right? So back in the days when I was living at my in-laws' house, I
So
was
is this
programming
your sister, your wife's sister or your brother's wife?
my wife's younger sister.
Okay, cool. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I was working on the desk upstairs, and this was when Shacks first came out, and I was actually no, it might have been a color touchscreen, and I was programming this interface, and I put this like hectic background on. It looked like a almost like a leathery sort of cow thing, whatever. And I was putting this text on, and she walks up the stairs, and she goes, "Is that like for someone's house?" And I went, "Yeah, yeah, it looks pretty good." And she's like, "That is disgusting. You cannot put that on someone's wall." I was like, "Oh, right." So I go, well, can you fix it then? And she's like, oh, I don't know how to use that software. So I taught her. And ever since then, she's learnt to program CBus. So she fully knows how to program CBus, like in all the CBus software, knows how to program on Pickhead, which is the old touchscreens. And she's an absolute weapon at the knack and the shack. So, and I don't know if you've seen on our website, we have graphic packages that we sell online to people.
I'm just sort of on your website now. So it's ryelec.com.au. Is this
Yep.
back when you did my old house? There was a floor plan. She did
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
there
she
was a
does all
floor
that.
plan with the
She does
lights.
all that. Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
that's super cool.
So
Yeah.
Ash does all that. So she'll do programming. She'll remote program for people. She builds graphics packages that we sell on our website to integrators, mostly in Australia, but also New Zealand, and we've sold them all over the world randomly, like one in France. Um, who knows what's going on there? But anyway, and then she does all of our social media, website, builds things like I'll just come up with crazy ideas sometimes and just say, do that, and she does it. So it's been amazing having someone in house like that.
That's cool. What so that's amazing. I feel I mean you would know this too, like when you get a good admin team, your life changes
Yeah,
completely. Yeah. What encouragement would you have to someone on the fence of, hiring an admin or
yeah. So Pam's our admin, and that was a scary step for me because
what
that's the
what stage? Like how many people?
probably too late. It was probably around 6 or 7, I reckon.
Yeah,
And
yeah, 100% too
I,
late. But
I
like,
was just doing everything poorly. I
yeah,
was quoting poorly. I was doing admin poorly. I was paying people and had no idea what I was doing. Yeah, so Pam jumped in, and yeah, that was the best thing ever because now she just handles all that stuff. Like I still oversee it, but she'll handle it all. Does the payroll. If I've anything comes into my inbox that Pam can handle, just flick it straight over. Just gets done. So it was the best thing. But it was so scary at the start because that's an employee that you're employing that you can't put in a truck and go make some money. Everyone else has to cover them. So it's a big step.
that's interesting. And then just to reflect on, like, back to a numbers sense. So generally what happens is the business owner is doing 30 to 35 hours on tools and 30 to 35 hours off tools
Yeah.
at a volunteer rate. So actually, what you think, what is currently profitable is profitable only because the business owner is volunteering a whole bunch of their time. So when
Absolutely.
you hire the admin, once again, you go from profitable to probably not, unless you're right on top of it. That's like in our calculators, we build you into the admin and price you at an early point because if you can get really stuck on it. If you get a factory and an admin in the similar year, and you quoted things the previous year, you can go and really unstuck. And that's the growth stage of business, right? Like what would you're at 10 now. I think 10 is probably the optimal number. The probably next optimal number from a calculator point of view is 25 to 30 or even 35 plus. Like what was the hardest stage? Was it the initial stage? Was it the middle stage? Like
The hardest stage, believe it or not, for me was actually about a year ago when we did have about 15 to 16. And I had the shiny, what do they call it, the shiny object syndrome, where I was trying to just do it all, and we had big electrical jobs going, we had massive automation projects going, and then we had all this solar and battery stuff going as well. Um, that was the hardest thing because we actually asset purchased a solar company to come into our team because I have no idea about solar. Um, but it was a good add-on, and that was the shiny object, right? We do a lot of automation maintenance for this big national company, and they just called me one day and they're like, "Oh, do you guys do solar?" I was like, "Hold that thought," and then suddenly we did solar. Yeah,
no. Yeah,
yeah, but and then but after a while, I looked back on that and I was like, that's probably not the right wasn't the right thing to do, because once again, I wasn't managing things properly. I wasn't even across what the hell was going on the other side of the business at all, and it just got real messy. And I just wanted to focus back on what our strong point is.
and why do you think? Because I mean, that's a tale as old as time. People, what works becomes maybe boring is all like it's easy, you
Yeah,
might even say, and look for a challenge. I think
yeah,
specifically business owners are usually looking for a challenge at some point, and they tend to steer away from what's working. I mean, I just look at the calculators and the simplicity of our platform. Essentially, if you measure your jobs and measure your hours and close a month, you're on the right track. But so many people want like a confusing answer when the answer is actually quite, or some people are trying to complicate what should be relatively simple. But that seems to be like human nature, and specifically in a business owner sense. So, like, what advice would you give yourself, back when you're asset purchasing? Would you just say, like, no, no, Tom? Like, what?
I would. Looking back now, I would have just thought about it a lot harder and just really just thought to myself, look, we've got a good thing going here. Let's just put all of our effort into building this and concentrating on what we're doing right. And look, at the time, it could have been a good thing. Like, and it actually, from a marketing point of view, it actually was a good thing. We got a lot of clients in here that we won massive automation projects for because we could also do the solar and tie it into the automation altogether. But then, I can do that anyway, just
with a subcontractor, like
without
another
having
company.
to run a solar company. So
Yeah,
it was, look, it wasn't all bad. It was great to sort of learn a lot about how that stuff works, what solar systems work with automation and what we can do with it and things like that. So,
yeah, and
the silver lining.
the best business owners don't give up. It's not a fail; it's a learning
Yeah,
module, basically.
big learning module. Yeah,
And then like you'll be in a different position in the future because of the thing you like inverted commas failed at 12,
yeah.
18 months ago, whatever. So okay, that's super interesting. So that was the hardest time for you.
Either that and then probably trying to grow from, I'd say 3 or 4 to up to about 6. So that was before admin, before Ash was helping with the marketing and all that full time. So, but I could handle that at the time because I didn't have kids, so I could just go on massive work benders, I used to call them, where I just work all day and then I just work till midnight doing quotes, doing office things. And it was just easy back then, but I could not do that anymore.
No, I agree. I think that there's two different it's like, you know, before kids and after kids. I think the business
Yeah,
takes two different trajectories completely because your life has to change, right?
100%. Yeah,
So well, it doesn't have to change, but
it should.
I guess if
Yeah,
you yeah can't excel at something you're not there at.
yeah,
So yeah, that's interesting because I feel like that was my hardest time from sort of getting from 4 to 8, and I think because I was working 2 full-time jobs, and mine was before kids too. But my advice to myself at that point would be like, if I had to go to admin and release myself from the back end mundane 30 hours of admin earlier,
yeah.
you would have like that was my learning point from that, which I think is probably yours too,
Big
actually.
one. Yeah, yeah. It does. It gives you a lot more time to concentrate on what you're actually good at instead of wasting all your time doing something that you have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah, and then it's okay. So working with you, you can and how much has that form like changed your life and business? That
Massively. It just,
website form.
it
Yeah,
just, we extract from the client's head what they want, and it can save multiple site meetings, multiple Zoom meetings. It's just this is everything that's possible. What do you want? They tell us. We usually do a couple of revisions of quotes, but yeah, saves a lot of time, and it makes us look very professional as well. So like if we're up against another automation company, and they're like, oh, that they might just rock up with an iPad or something and be like, all right, so what are you thinking? When we've sent them a form where it's like, here's everything that's possible. Let us know what you like, and it's professional with videos and photos and text. It just sets us apart a bit.
yeah. And then I noticed like you've got a great social media presence. What's the importance of that? You reckon?
I think it's just good to showcase what we can do, and that shows a lot of confidence, or gives clients and other electricians a lot of confidence. Like it's not just us saying we can do stuff; we're actually showing. Like we try and show primarily our own sites, or pretty much only our own sites. We've done professional videos of jobs and things like that, so it sort of allows other sparkies to see firstly what is possible, all these crazy KNX switches, but then also gives confidence of that we can actually get the job done because they can see it in person.
Yeah, I always feel like social media, a website, and Google reviews are almost social proofing your business. So
Yeah.
good enough for Cam, good enough for me. Good enough for Betty, good enough for me. And how important is on brand in social media too? I'm in relatively new to Instagram, I'm gonna say since November last
Doing a
year.
good job.
Thank you. So, but I see so many people, you know, posting something. They're doing such a small job, and it's just like not filling me with confidence that they. So if I was say a commercial client or wanted to social proof them and went to the carpet doesn't match the drapes, like, oh, you wouldn't be a good fit for our
Yeah.
company at that point. Like, how important is being on brand there and having the right jobs on there, and
Yeah,
kind of stuff.
massively. And I'm on my Instagram, but I've technically been kicked off Instagram or managing it because
By who? By Ash?
by Ash. So if you scroll to the very bottom of our Instagram, I'm pretty sure it's still there unless she's taken it off.
Okay.
The original post was me driving my four-wheel drive ute through mud with the Ryelec sign on the side, and then the next post was me on the balcony holding a beer, just saying like big week done. And that was many many years ago. But you know, we are like we work for super high end clients, and we need to portray that real high end vibe. So Ash does an amazing job now, like keeping that consistent. Where when I was in charge, it wasn't on brand at all.
Anything goes.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
Formula
Hey,
Couple of beers
Tommy,
on the yacht. Yeah.
interested to sort of, I mean, this is probably a bit more sideways here. I know you're like sort of focusing around the programming side of it, but they're all electricians. And so this is where I get, I guess, the leading it into more around like the expertise and sort of niching into different, like into the market sort of thing. Like, obviously, you clearly do project work, like that's um, quite evident. Do you have ongoing service arrangements with clients as well, and or like what does your service sort of side of the business look like?
So that's something that we're working on at the moment. So in America, that's a huge thing. So I follow a lot of American integration companies. Some of them are huge. They've got like 6 to 10 offices. That's a big thing over there. It's just like aircon, like automation and things like that should be similar to aircon, where you install a big system and then it should be on a scheduled maintenance because
Yeah,
you
or
know
even a
there's
subscription payment.
well, that's what we're looking at doing. That's what's huge in the States. So but it's just not a thing here for whatever reason. We more just break fix. Like someone will just call us and we'll just react. Um, but
Love
yeah,
reaction in Australia.
I
Love it.
definitely we're definitely working on that at the moment. Where we're going to have a couple of packages where the lower tier will be we're available between these times. You've got X amount of programming hours included, reduced rates, and we actively do things like update the network firmware and update the software of the processor that runs the house and just things like that. Especially when we're in charge of like the network, we're we're liable in a way to make sure that that's like updated and secure because things change constantly with hacking and all this kind of stuff. You've got to make sure that the network's up to scratch.
Especially
Yeah,
when you talk about, I think it's a different market. I remember for us, we worked at a lot of, um, people worth a lot of money, a
yeah,
lot of people that were quite well known and famous, you might even say.
mm,
So it's like we had like no social media. You cannot film anything and
yeah.
post anything, like whether it's TikTok. TikTok didn't exist at that point, but maybe Instagram Live,
MySpace, MySpace.
MySpace. Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
MSN
on that
Messenger. Like,
Commodore 64 kind of vibe, like, but that's huge for us. Like that, when you get into that level of dealing with that level of client, it's a completely different, you
yeah,
know, like the hacking is real because
yeah,
and all that kind of stuff. It's not like a
100%.
regular hunter.
Especially with high profile people. Like we have still jobs that we are not allowed to film. You know, um, we're not allowed to post anything. And it's always a shame because they're always the most impressive ones as well.
Yeah,
Like we've been able to film some really impressive jobs, but there's also some that we're just not allowed to do anything.
not allowed to do. In regards to that, I'm interested in that service side of things because I think it's obviously. I mean, Crowe and I do talk about it a fair bit, but we're sort of strong believers in like a bit of a hybridness to your business. Like you need a couple of arms
Yeah,
to be able to ride the waves in the economy and in the marketplace, and then also to I think it becomes an attractive place for staff members, particularly to give variety. With the service side of things, obviously like interfacing in regards to remote access is probably huge for you. So I'm assuming you probably don't try to avoid stepping on site where necessary. Would that be
yeah.
fair to say?
9 times out of 10, we can actually resolve an issue remotely,
Yep.
or with the client on the phone remotely.
Mhm.
And sometimes it is a hardware issue or something like that, and we need to go. But yeah,
But
it's
you've
been
got
a
a
great thing for us.
resolution then at the end of the day, though, like at least if you know it's a hardware issue, it's like, okay, sweet, we
Exactly,
can
exactly.
organize that.
Yeah,
Do you find then too, because this is probably the biggest thing I've found in the industry over the years with automation is that like the lead times between like fault occurring and then being able to be assessed or repaired, has that now shrunk because it just basically becomes essentially from the
yeah.
desk of like, hey, we can get to you're probably doubling your capacity because you're not like downtime with driving.
Well, we just do it in between. So like we could be in the office just pre-programming a job, and that could
Mhm.
be what's booked in for the day. But
Yep.
then a client will call up and just say, "Hi, I've got this issue, like the sensor's doing this or whatever." We'll just jump straight in, spend 15 minutes sorting it out, and then we're just back to where we were. We haven't even left the office. So it's great. And another good thing with the whole remote access thing is being able to actually build the team. So we've had primarily myself and Max, our main integrator, in the office, and then we'll deploy our minions out the site basically, and we can just team viewer into each of the, like we could be on 4 sites at once essentially if we needed to, but usually we jump in between. We'll go on this guy's site for a little bit and help them with something they're stuck on, and then they'll continue on, and we'll get a call from this guy on site and we'll help that person. And it's just been really good that way. Like it's not like electrical or plumbing or something where like if someone's stuck, you've got to go and help them. You've got to drive there to help them. We can just log in, show them what we've done, screen share, and then we just jump back out again and they keep going.
It's so cool. And then what about like a project that you do, right? What do you I guess the big thing with automation is like how many visits do you go back for to get the lighting right and
Yeah.
bits and pieces,
Yeah.
what do you how do you build your quoting around that? Is it just like, you spend a day there in the final bid, or do you go there at dusk, or you
That one's also been a hard lesson in the past. So
I can imagine. Yeah. Yeah.
primarily like setting the lighting levels. So the systems we use these days, the reason we use them is it allows the client to build their own scenes and set all their own levels. So they're not relying on us anymore as much. Where back in the day with CBus, we as an integrator had to do it all. But the big one for us was switches. So we would program the switches how we thought they should go, and then the client would come in and be like, "Oh, that's not what I thought. I wanted it to be like this." And then we'd go and we'd program it again, and they'd be like, "Oh, that's not working anymore," or "Actually, I think I want it this way." And that was another thing that was unclear. So part of our process now is before we do anything, before we even order a switch, we have this massive document called a switch programming schedule, and we lay out all the switches, we show all the buttons, and we have like all these drop down menus of like, with sensors. They've got like a day and a night feature, things like that, and how all the buttons are going to go, the labeling of the buttons, the color of the finishes, all that kind of stuff. And we get that formally approved first, and then we pre-program it all here. And that's been massive because now we've drawn a line in the sand. So we go there, the switches are exactly as we've agreed. And then if they want changes, well, they've agreed. So then, we have a leg to stand on to say, well, we're just going to charge an hourly rate moving forward to update everything.
Yeah, and then 6-month, 12-month maintenance, or like, obviously warranty becomes a big thing because,
Yep.
and anyone that's done like a high level job or commercial job, the warranty stuff can be the silent killer. Every time you go back and change something, is $1,000, $500, $2,000. Like,
Yeah.
how do you build that into the price?
So we obviously have our warranties of our products and our services and things like that. Warranty, yeah, that's like I'm working every day with electronics. There's always going to be issues with something. Sometimes we'll get something out of the box and it doesn't work. That's just one of the things. Like you've just got to act on it. You've just got to get it done, because at the end of the day, the client's paid us a couple $100,000 for an automation project. If a touchscreen packs it in after a month or two, or whatever, we just got to change it. So, but all the suppliers we work with are amazing, and they'll do it real quick. And we have all this stuff in the showroom too, and we've got some stuff on the shelves downstairs. So we'll give loan equipment out. Like one example is literally just before Christmas, one of the Basalt touchscreens just started playing up a little bit, and it just had a bit of an internal fault. So we just ripped the one off the showroom wall, that one behind us here, and just let them have it over Christmas because no one was coming here anyway. And we just ordered another one from Belgium. It came in, and we just replaced it when it came in, and then I just send the broken one back, and they refund us. So
I think so many times that the simple things always win. Like customer service is so huge, and just doing the right thing with a long-term plan with a good spirit, I think is huge. And I think you've always embodied that. How would you, like, obviously, flash back 15 years ago, you're looking at yourself now in a showroom with like clear processes and documentation and sign things off. And, obviously someone getting into automation, there might be a bunch of pressure to have, I think a lot of people feel pressure at the start. I've got to have every single thing perfect before I move forward. Yeah. What advice would you give yourself back then? You can't do it all at once, right?
No, you definitely, like, I'm 100% guilty of this. I just throw myself in. Like that's always what I've done, especially like how I said before, the first sea bus job I did was a pub in Mudgee. Like, whatever. I just throw myself in as deep as possible and then sink or swim. Luckily, I've mostly swam, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's the best advice or not, but that's what I've always done, and it's worked for me. So I think I really we've sped our jobs up. So when we first started doing automation, I think we would have done, well, I don't know, say 4 or 5 big homes a year. Now we've got about 25 on the books, 30 active. So, and that is only possible because of the systems that we have, the way that we do it, the team that we have. But I never would have thought that I could have done that. It was just from basically just starting, making mistakes. Every time you make a mistake, as long as when you make the mistake, you think about it and then fix it instead of going, oh, fuck, that was a mistake, and just keep going and do the same thing again. Eventually over time, everything will get better and faster and more accurate. So that's just how I've done it.
Actually, I love that. I think time on ground is so underestimated. What year in the business do you reckon it clicked for you? 15 years in now, like, do you reckon it was 5 years, 7 years, 10
Yeah,
years?
I'm probably a slow learner. I reckon it would have been, well, like, we did start off a few years first just doing electrical. So I think from the automation point of view, I would have battled pretty hard for 4 to 5 years, I reckon, before and we've refined the systems that we use as well for things like that. Like, as you know, we used to do RTI a lot.
Yeah.
It was a good system, but it just did not allow us to scale the business because of just the differences in the software. You had to build all the graphics yourself. So now we use systems where we're more programming in the back end, and we don't have to worry about making graphics and all this kind of stuff. And it just builds that sort of stuff happens by itself, and it's just a lot faster and smoother. So yeah, it's just you just got to just get in there and learn these things, I guess.
Does a part of you still want to create some sexy leather graphics though? A little bit?
Yeah, look, sometimes when I do my own house one day, I'll pull the leather back out. I reckon leather
Yeah,
back
yeah,
back
yeah.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you be frothing.
yeah.
So what if like a pub contacted you, or an electrician was at a pub and they had like Crestron as the overriding, what do you call it, like the umbrella program or
Yep.
whatever? How do you do all that stuff as well?
So we actively chose not to try and do every control system. I wanted to pick 2 or 3 that I knew were great and just nail them. And that's once again that's been allowed us to scale. So if someone calls me and says, this I've got this pub and it's got Crestron in it, then I will go out to my network of other programmers and get the right person to come in and
It's
do
like Dave, right?
Dave Edgar. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
amazing at Crestron. So we'll get Kadar in for that, or
Shout
um,
out to Kadar too. That we got them in at Maris Brothers Penshurst, I think, and they
yeah.
still do all the work out there. So
Oh,
yeah, I
nice.
saw Dave, my
They're doing
auntie.
some big
My
stuff
auntie's next
now.
door neighbor.
They're
Yeah.
they're on that. I think it's called the One Tower in Sydney. It's been a huge job for them. I think it's hundreds of apartments all with Crestron, so they're killing it.
Should get Dave on actually. That'd be interesting
Should get him on, yeah.
in his
Dave's
sense.
always been a legend, yeah.
And so you're like, this is interesting to talk about because, we get asked a lot, what do you niche? And I feel like electrically, you've got to sort of diversify into enough, right? But you're like niche on a niche. You're automation, but then only certain types of automation. But I
Correct.
guess the biggest thing for anyone listening back is you've earned that right. You couldn't just come out today and start a business and just be on that train, You'd have to.
It'd be difficult, yeah. It would be difficult.
Not impossible, but
No,
difficult. Yeah.
man, if I can do it, anyone can do it. I've like I said before, just general Sparky, nothing special really. Just I think it's more persistence over brains. To be honest, I've just always just pushed and pushed and pushed. If I needed to learn something, I'll just do it. Like I'll just learn it. So yeah, so anyone can do it.
Yeah, cool. I had something. Oh, okay. So, ideal day for you in the office, like,
Yep.
or site. Like, what's your ideal sort of day? Do you still love like mixing it up on site sometimes, or?
Yeah, so at the moment, so my ideal day is still actually programming the system, although I don't do that very often anymore.
Like by
Um,
yourself?
yeah, just like from the office, just
And
shoot.
any music on? I noticed you were
Oh,
what were you frothing on the other day? Yellow card that I put on, or no?
yeah,
Black wagon. Yeah,
the
yeah.
old school lag wagon. Yeah, I love a bit of NoFX, Pennywise, Lagwagon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
bit of that.
is that your ideal sort of, because I think most successful business owners still want to rip and tear on the nitty gritty. I would say like a little like that's fun. Like it's an
Yeah,
ideal sort of day.
yeah.
Not all, but I think it's fun. What do you do? Like if you're would you be programming with some music in the background?
I'm these days I'm mostly sales now, so I'll do a lot of the design, sales, and one rabbit hole I've gone down at the moment is like no, AI and no code for all the back end, like so essentially automating the business. So like the business automates houses, and now I'm trying to automate the business, and I find that sort of really exciting at the moment. So
Yeah.
we're doing a lot of
How
that
is
stuff.
AI?
Yep.
What's the future of that for you guys?
I think no one really knows what to do with it at the moment, but we use it for a lot of things. So one example is when someone fills that form out, it'll automatically respond after 5 minutes. So it'll read all their responses, and I've prompted it to automatically reply with an email because I'm not trying to do this just for the sake of it. I'm trying to do it to fix things that I wasn't doing properly. So people would go. I'd ask someone to fill out this form. It takes like 20 minutes, and then it would come through to me, and then I wouldn't respond for like 5 or 6 days, which I thought was a bit shit. So I've set up this automatic response now that basically says, thank you for doing this, and it pulls in their information. It says like, we're excited for your job at this location. These systems are all great. Blah blah blah. From here moving forward, will pick up your design, and we'll be back to you in about a week or two.
Yeah.
So just automatic things like that. The best one that we've done so far is handover documents. So whenever we do a project, you've got to create these handover documents, especially with automation, the passwords, the IP addresses, like all this stuff. It was taking us about 4 to 5 hours in the office, and no one wanted to do it. Everyone just dreaded it. So I got my secret weapon Ash involved, and she built all these Google Doc templates, and you can actually put in brackets some text, and you can use the AI to fill in those things. So essentially what we do now, one of our processes is every job that we do, the guys have to fill out a spreadsheet. It's like a big checklist, essentially. What's the IP address of this? What are the login details? Blah, blah, blah. They click a button at the top, and it pushes out an automation that just automatically generates the handover docs, and within 2 minutes, they're in the folder. And
So
that'll look great. So things like that. There's a lot of stuff you can do to really automate all those repetitive tasks.
Yeah,
that's
so
so
it sounds like the automation side, like I find it really interesting when people talk about like automating their business. It's sort of like they actually, my perception is that like they want to disappear, like as such, whereas you're actually not wanting to disappear at all. You're actually probably more than anything wanting to get involved. It's more about replacing the repetitive, mundane sort of um, I know basics probably it might come across as a bit condescending sort of word, but in that sense about like making streamlining it all so that it all comes together at the end in a bow.
Yep,
Is that sort of where you see it more than like,
100%.
hey, someone wants to disappear and be in the Bahamas his whole life?
Yeah. So what it is like, as I mentioned before, we've got sort of 20 to 25 automation projects on the run at any one time. That's a lot of back and forth with the electricians and like, where's this job at and things like that. So what I'm trying to do is just create a process from start to finish and streamline all the little bits. So we don't need 10 people in the office. We can just have two or three, and a lot of stuff is automatically happening. Um, I guess what my sort of long term goal with it all is to not automate myself out of the business, but automate myself out of it a little bit. So then I can have a bit of time, maybe 1 or 2 days a week to potentially even help other people do the same thing. I know there's, once again, like in the States, I follow a few people in the States because they're just further ahead of us. There's companies that will do that, they'll help just a general sparker or a general plumber, just do simple things that will help. So, things like creating those the form templates that capture the lead and integrate it straight into your CRM or your project software, and just all this stuff that you need people to do. We can get it done automatically. So yeah, I just use my own company as the test dummy.
Yeah,
it's
like
so cool to hear you talk because I can genuinely see that you're excited by all this stuff, and
Mm,
I feel like when you find an area that you're passionate in, it becomes less about work and hours and more about product and result. And that seems to like come out of you, which is
Yeah.
really cool, you know. Then so okay, so future for Ryelec for you is just to keep moving forward. So just to backtrack, someone wanting to work with you can jump on the website. You do you write back to? I mean, am I talking to you on the Instagram or a bot or what am I?
No, you are
Yeah,
talking.
right.
You were talking to me still. You haven't botted that bit yet. It's either myself or Ash monitor the Instagram, but
Yeah,
I, I always respond to the comments that I know are for me.
yeah.
Um,
Cool.
but
So
yeah, you can just email us info@ryelec.com.au, or you can just jump on our website and fill out the form there.
and I guess your business in the future opens you up to have the business structure seems to open you up to be able to employ Sparkies Australia wide. Would you, is that a thing
Look,
or
that's something I've thought about. It'd be cool to sort of have like a few little satellite companies or offices. Like we've sort of touched on it with 40 a little bit, about having them as like a local presence, and we help them as implement the automation on hire and resi jobs. I'm still unsure of how that will work. I haven't really I haven't really jumped on it too much yet, but it, we've proven that we can do automation work from Heathcote in New South Wales anywhere.
yeah.
Um,
So
so we
why
just
not? Yeah.
the only broken link is that you need to pick the best Sparkies in certain areas that understand it as well and work with them to implement it. You just can't do it with anyone because it'll become too hard, and you've got to be pretty patient as well.
Yeah, you got to have that right personality type, in
Mhm.
temperament and ability and keenness, yeah,
Yeah,
and you know, and it's obviously the your product going out as well, which is
yeah.
huge.
Well, that's
But
the other thing. Yeah.
that's cool. And so if anyone is listening and sort of want to, you can reach out to Tom whether you want to work with him or whether you want to, you know, advice on programming something like that. And any advice to someone, let's say a company's starting up or at 3 to 5 that's thinking about getting into automation.
Yep.
Is there a point where you'd be like, don't do it unless you have this certain personality type, or you know, if
Um,
you're going to do it, you got to do it full on. Like, what advice would you have for someone?
I wouldn't bother doing it unless you're genuinely really interested in it, because it's not as easy as it looks sometimes. Like you've got to be
It's pretty
patient with it.
hard, to be fair, but from the
Well,
outside.
yeah, well, true. But I think like we're seeing it a lot more at the moment, where a lot of Sparkies are starting to jump on automation, which is totally cool. But I think where it's coming from is probably seeing the value of our quotes coming through and just being like, oh, we could add that in. I think you need to start small and move up to the bigger spec, because if you automation in the past has had a pretty bad name, and where I feel that came from, not to put any brands in the dirt, but Clipsal Cbus basically just put Cbus out through the wholesaler channels and made their software free. So there's Cbus all over Sydney, probably all over Australia, where the Sparky's just gone, cool, I'll add Cbus. They go and buy it from the wholesaler, they download the software, they give it a crack, and someone's house just doesn't work. And for years, I've been battling that. Oh, automation's stupid. Like, why wouldn't I just put a switch on? Blah blah blah. And that's where a lot of that comes from. So yeah, I think if you're going to jump into automation as an electrician, probably start with something like Cbus or Dynalight and introduce lighting control into your business, and then maybe go to the next step and introduce some audio, some multi-room audio, like some Sonos, some basic stuff like that, and then probably use your own house as a test dummy as well. Has been a big one. I personally didn't do that, and that was wrong. Um, I'd use customers' houses, but I would
You know,
use
someone sitting like looking at their.
yeah, but I would
Like, damn, you told me.
I would battle through and keep going, where some people would just bail.
Tom,
Um,
why are you in our bedrooms at
Yeah,
night asleep?
it's
yeah, well,
let the
100%.
rug,
It
let the
was like
rug.
that
Wait,
sometimes.
all off, all off.
Yeah,
It was like that sometimes. Like I'd be getting calls, like in the early days, they'd be like, "Oh, this isn't working," and I'd literally work at my house on the program file till like midnight until I figured it out, and then go back the next day, and I would have quoted a few days, and this would be like a week later. So you've got to be ready to basically have some hard lessons learned, I think. But when you get through it, it's good.
yeah. I think that when you get through the sweat stage of any business, it's good. And I sort of want to finish on this. You know, you seem to, like I said at the start of this, you're a rare unicorn in the sexiest way possible. You know what I mean? Like in the nicest way possible. Like you've got a good skill set and you're good to deal with.
Yeah.
And like, do you like how do you read books? Do you look into that? Do you like what? How,
I hate reading, but I listen to a lot of audiobooks and a lot of podcasts. To the point where I'm a little bit obsessive sometimes. Like I'll mow the lawn and listen to a business podcast instead of just mow the lawn. You know, it's like it's
so will I actually. Yeah.
go for a run and listen. So I'm constantly like even laying in bed trying to get the kids to sleep. I'll just pop a headphone in and try and listen to something and drown out the crying. So um, I've been doing that for years, and you know I probably aren't the best. I'm probably not the best at retaining information, but if you drill it into your head for 4 to 5 years, it sort of starts to make sense. And yeah, I generally enjoy listening to stuff like that and learning more, and excited to push forward in the
Yeah.
business. So.
Cool, man. Thanks so much for your time and for hanging out. And just like on the final wrap up, what like project have you got at the moment, or maybe what's been your favorite project, either coming up or currently or in the past that you've worked on?
Yeah,
You don't have to share names in case it's one of those ones you could name, but like,
no. This client is amazing, and it's actually the Jarrell one that you know about, the one that you started.
no, actually, this is a funny story. I did the temps there, and then this is what when I was sort of like selling the business and moving up, and I sat with the owners in
Yep.
at the brick pit in Kirrawee in
Oh,
some
yeah.
godly like June or July day with howling southerly. If you don't know the brick pit, it's like it's got no doors on sort of it's
Yeah.
open. So we're sitting in this howling southerly. It was so cold. Like I had two jumpers on, freezing. I'm sitting there with the client and his wife, and they're shaking. I remember I think the original quote for me was 165, no automation. This
Yep.
is excluding your quote at that point. And they were like, I need you to be at 150. And I was like, well, that's just gonna you have to drop something out of the scope. But
Yep.
he seemed like a legend to deal with.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like well, unfortunately for you, you got the job, right? So sick.
We got the job. We're actually direct to client for both electrical and automation on that one, which is weird.
Which I think is pretty common in
Yeah.
such a large. But yeah, so that's the Jarrell one's your favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We will be able to showcase this one, and it's going to be amazing. It's got like a legitimate X golf simulator in it, a whole gym, a spa, a pool, a dedicated cinema room, a rooftop garden with speakers everywhere, invisible speakers throughout. You know,
When you say invisible speakers, where are they?
in the ceiling.
Like
So
you can't see any grill or anything? Like is that
yeah. So the way that they work is you basically you sheet the roof. It has to be gyprock or Venetian plaster or wallpaper, some kind of finish like that. You sheet the roof, you cut a hole out, almost like a manhole sized hole.
yeah.
You frame around it, you screw this speaker up, and the finish of the speaker is actually gyprock paper. And then you set over the whole thing, completely over the top of it. As long as it's less than 2.5 millimeters thick of compound, you're good. And you paint straight over the top of it, and they pump like they sound great, but you cannot see a thing.
All I can think about is what if something goes wrong?
Hey,
Oh,
I
no.
100%. I get this question all the time in the showroom.
It's
My answer is, so we have them in the showroom. We've got a pair of the 8-inch Invisibles. I tell the clients all the time. So we've had multiple Christmas parties here where the apprentices are allowed to go wild because if something's going to break, I want it to break here. They
Yeah.
haven't blown yet. Plus, we use the Sonance branded speakers, and they'll warrant the speakers for 15 years, including ripping the ceiling out and repairing the whole roof and everything.
Yeah.
So
wow, just the importance of aligning with good products like that. That's really cool. Yeah, that's amazing. So, and then I guess that 7 mile spot in Taroa, looking straight at Culburra, I guess it's looking at is
yeah,
just
over 7 Mile Beach. Yeah, it's
yeah,
beautiful. Yep.
that's amazing. Cool, man.
Sweet.
Thanks
No
so much
worries.
for your time.
Thanks, Tom.
I appreciate you like always, and see you guys soon.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.